Welcome to the COVID edition of another video from VW Sage. And today we're going to do something that has been somewhat of a hobby for myself and another gentleman who I'm going to introduce here in a second, which is really look at the Silversides market in the United States. I've purchased now 2 buses and with varying degrees of investment that had to be made after I purchased them. And but I'm a rookie compared to Jason, who you sometimes will see he's on the Bus Grease Monkey forum as someone kind of leading the charge of looking at Silversides that are for sale. And he's also you'll see him on Bus Grease Monkey videos making comments and things like that. And so, Jason, I'm going to introduce you here. Good morning.
Good morning.
So you and I kind of came up with this idea. We're actually running a registry that can be found throughout the internet of bus Silversides, either the PD3751s or the PD4151s or the PGD buses, which is the pre-war versions of them. We're kind of running a spreadsheet of where they are, or do we know what's going on with them? And we're taking it a little step further today by looking at buses that have been up for sale recently or are currently for sale around the country. And if you see any buses that you like in this video, go to the Bus Grease Monkey forum. And if you're not a member already, there is a discussion going on, and most of or many of these are linked there. And you can certainly reach out to try to find this bus if any of these buses seem interesting to you. You could also kind of leave a comment on this particular video, and we'll try to get back with you as to a link to the buses that are for sale if they're still for sale. So with that, Jason, kind of talk a little bit about kind of to start with what your attraction to the buses were. I mean, why have you been trying to find a bus for over a year?
Well, I'm looking for a bus that I can restore to looking as original as possible on the outside, but yet doing a little bit more modern, still Art Deco interior that more suits my needs. Most of these buses that I look at, they all need a renovation on the inside. Pretty much every one of them seems to be a gut job, which I guess is normal with a bus of this vintage. So I'm looking for something that isn't highly modified, still has all the original windows, preferably with as few holes in the roof as possible, because I'd like to keep the original Greyhound look. I really like that look. I really like the style of the bus. So most of the buses I've come across, there's either something wrong with the title, there's way too many holes in the bus, it's missing windows. There always just seems to be something that's a bit of a showstopper for me. I mean, none of these buses are ultimately couldn't be put back to being original. It's just a matter of how much work are you willing to do to get what you want out of the bus, I think, versus the cost. So just trying to find the right bus. I haven't found the right bus yet, and we'll keep looking until I do.
So we have up on the screen right now an original Greyhound that's been in service. I mean, this thing didn't come right off the factory line in Pontiac, but it's been driving for a while. So this would be original condition. And so there's a couple things that we should probably point out as to what does original or stock look like. First off, it's all the windows all the way across. And the windows they're in an aluminum frame, and some of them don't. There's the silver Greyhound dog, which we have the ability to reproduce these now. We have the dimensions and everything. There's the Greyhound lettering on the side of the bus. This one's kind of interesting. Have you ever seen one with an ad on the side before?
I've seen pictures, vintage pictures like this one. Yeah.
Yeah. But everything is pretty straight. Look at all the silver. There's no holes in it. There will be some holes on any bus with a dog, because I believe that they did put some holes in it to attach it to the side of the bus. One of the interesting things that you see about these buses is if you look at these little holes all the way around the driver wheel on the front, that is an original 19-inch rim. And the cool thing I was reading, I don't know if you knew this, but they went 19 inches because it's a very unusual size, and Greyhound had them made specifically for Greyhound, so no one could steal the tires. Think about this. If you had a regular tire, you could put on a brand new set. The Greyhound driver could go somewhere else in a city and put used tires on and exchange them for new tires and make a little extra money on the side. And Greyhound figured that out. And so they decided, well, if we're going to be, buying fleets and fleets of these buses, let's have a special size made that it's impossible for someone to go along and try to sell it. And so 19-inch rims are now really hard to find. These are split rims. And the split rims are, of course, a little bit more dangerous. I don't run split rims on mine because they're just not safe. And so most people have gone to 20. Let me see. What are they? 20? Are they 20 inch?
22 fives.
Yeah.
Well, a lot of them still have 20-inch split rims. The ones that you see typically for sale, a lot of them haven't been upgraded to 22 fives. The other disadvantage with the split rim is you're running a tubed radial, so it's a tire with a tube in it. They're harder to balance, they're less reliable, and tubes are costly.
So it's pretty safe to assume you're not going to find stock rims, or if you do, you're not going to be able to keep the stock rims. And so the 22.5 is a more standard size. You can find steel rims. As a matter of fact, I stumbled on to the fact that all UPS trucks, the little car brown trucks that drive around your town, they actually run 22.5 rims and fit perfectly on the bus. That's what I'm using on my pre-war bus right now. The other thing that I noticed on this particular picture is that the fog lights are missing and they've been blanked out, and that's kind of an unusual usual thing as well. And so I don't know why this almost looks like it's being operated as a city bus, not a long haul. But either way, it's pretty cool. So the Michigan lights, that's something that I always look for. Are these intact? Because they're impossible to find unless, are you guys reproducing these now? You and
Yes, we are. We've had a bit of a holdup with the whole COVID-19 thing in our factory that's producing the stuff for us, but I have a few here from previous that are actually ready to go. If you need just one or two, then I might be able to accommodate, but otherwise we're gonna have to wait until another production run's made.
Another one is these corner lights above the on both sides, and then there's corner lights on the back of the bus as well.
Yeah, the front
That,
ones are amber and the rear ones are sorry, one's yellow and one's red.
Another really unique thing about the Silversides is this is an actual little turn signal cutout, where there's a turn signal there and there's a turn signal there. The buses that were produced in 1947 and 48 have what's called this, well, they call them the shoe cooler or the boot cooler, but it's a little air vent that the driver can open up to get some fresh air into his driving compartment. And they always leak. And so a lot of the ones that I've been finding used, they just were silicone shut, or, somehow they just made them not open anymore. And so this is kind of stock, if you will. I mean, this is kind of what you are looking for, is something that has the Greyhound. Of course, this is blue. I can find, I'll pull up one with color and I'll drop it in so you can see kind of what it looks like colorized. But most of the buses back then photos were taken in black and white. And there's some really glorious examples of fully restored buses as well, at least on the outside. The inside have been turned into campers and things. One of our friends has one that's probably the gold standard. We call it the Mark Renner bus in the Silversides world because Mark was the guy who restored it, and you can certainly find that out on the internet in videos and other things as well. So let's dig into this. Now, the first thing that I did was say, how come these buses are still around? And so you take a look at what we have here. So these are the scrap value as of April 2020, which is when we're making this video. And you can see scrap prices where they are. So a Silversides bus is about 21,000 pounds with an empty shell. In other words, nothing inside it. We've seen the Bus Grease Monkey's bus is like 27,000 pounds, but he's got some serious tools and things that he carries with him. My pre-war, it has weighed in at about 21,800, I think was the weight that it came in on. And my Texas bus, the other bus that I have, does not, I haven't been able to weigh it yet. So you can do the math. And actually, Jason, we didn't do the math. Do you want to try to add this up right now?
Well, yeah, we can do it quickly.
So windows and tires obviously have no value. So right there, you've got 1,400 pounds that they get no credit. And I know that the 6 tires are going to weigh about 800 pounds because I've had to haul them around. But the aluminum body, for example, in other words, with all the other stuff stripped off, it's just the aluminum. The bus is a unibody construction, and it's made out of aluminum. Right now, aluminum is running right now about 20 cents a pound. So
$2,800 on aluminum if you take it at 20 cents a pound.
So you've got $2,800 there. And then you've got some iron axles. So this is just regular steel, what we call light iron. And let's call it between the two, let's call it 2.5 tons between the engine and the transmission and the axles, 2.5 tons. So we've got 80 about $100 in iron on one of these buses, and then you've got about 50 pounds of wiring, and wiring is running what is copper right now is running 70 cents a pound. So you've got somewhere about $35 in copper. So you add that all up, and $100 plus 28's 2,900, $2,935 would be the scrap value. Okay. And generally, I don't know, when we've been talking, haven't we kind of just said scrap value is about $2,500?
Roughly, yeah, I would think so, but there's a lot more to it than that. You still got to take it apart.
You got to dismantle it, which of course you have to find a scrapyard willing to take one of these things apart, because it would be very time consuming. They know how to rip a car apart pretty quick now. They've got ways to do that, but taking a bus apart is a completely different job. And then you've got shipping, which I estimated about $600 to ship a bus from any place to the near scrapyard. And so, when you look at it, the bus is, if you can find a scrapyard that'll take one, a bus is, its basement price, let's call it $2,000. That's, if you can talk somebody into scrapping it, it'd be $2,000. And so that's why you see a lot of these around, because they're not easy to deal with. The scrapyards don't really want to deal with them. Nobody wants to pay $600 to ship it to the scrapyard. And that's why, it's lucky, it's the reason why you see a lot of these still floating around.
Well, and some of them are stuck behind trees in people's backyards, and they're next to impossible to get rolling and get out of the yard again.
Yeah. Well, so let's take a look at some buses here. So we're trying to go in sequential order here, and that's the very first buses are the pre-war. We stumbled onto this one in Riverside, California, by a guy named Tim, owns it. And this is the actual very first. It's not running right now, but it's the very first Silverside. It's the third one ever made by Yellow Coach, and it's in pretty good shape. I talked to the guy about it. The interior, you can see that it has kind of like a white birch ceiling in it, and it looks pretty straight. I don't know. What do you think about its general appearance?
I think it looks like a pretty nice bus. The only downside to this one is it's missing the engine doors at the back. It's had some plywood fill-ins made,
Back
which,
here.
yeah, those are obtainable. As long as the ones from the 3751 fit, then you could easily get a set and put on there.
So this would be a decent one to have. I mean, you would take claim to say that you've got the oldest Silversides bus in the world, because chances are finding the first two that were ever made are very, very slim. And I verified it with the guy. He has the actual manufacturer plate, and it is a 41001-003. Now, those turn signals that he has cut in, those came in aftermarket, but they did a nice job with them. The old pre-wars didn't actually have turn signals because they weren't, you didn't need them. This would be a cool bus. To be honest with you, this one I thought had been sold and a buyer backed out. And I kind of wish I had bought this one. There's probably some more work to it than mine, but it's a sweet bus. So where would you put a value on this one? And you've got some heritage here. You've got
That's a
people
good
like.
question. I don't know a lot about this one. I think it would depend on what it would take to get it rolling again, because any of these buses that aren't rolling, I mean, as you know, you've done two of them now. Well, you haven't finished the Texas bus, but it takes a significant effort and amount of money to get them roadworthy again. So I think that would come down to it. What does it actually need to get rolling again? What's wrong with it?
So Tim, the buyer when I talked to him, said that it was driving 4 years ago. He said it
Okay.
needs wiring, which most of these buses do, but that's a really simple thing to do. It's not it's not complicated at all. It's like 14 leads from the circuit, from the front dashboard all the way to the back.
Right.
So it needs rewiring. It needs obviously the rack and some tune-up things. I imagine it'll need the bearings to be repacked. What I would call more service things than anything else. Tires, tires all the way around on these things are $3,000. To have somebody repack the bearings, you're looking at $1,500. To rewire, you're probably looking at about $500 if you do the work yourself, maybe $250.
Yeah.
And
So
so,
this, yeah. So you could probably have this one rolling in well under a week, depending on how handy you are with wiring.
And how willing you are to find, or how able you are to find somebody to help you do it, that's a big trick. So,
Yeah, in a bus like this, you got to get somebody to come to the bus unless you want to spend a lot of money towing it.
so I would say this is a fair price for this to be maybe 11,000, 10 or 11,000. in terms of it doesn't need major surgery. I don't know. I mean,
I
what would
would
you think?
probably go. I'd probably go a bit less because you're
Okay.
$3,000 in tires.
Yeah.
You're probably a week's worth of labor. Um, I mean, I would put any bus that's drivable at about that price at 11,000. That's in this condition. It needs an interior job. It needs some cosmetics. It needs some work. So I I don't know. I kind of disagree. I'd go probably closer to 5,000 on this one.
Okay. So the next one is now this is my bus. This is 4101. It's a pre-war, but it's number 141. So it was manufactured in 1941, not 1940 like the other one. As you can see, it's still got turn signals that were cut in, which I'm going to have a metal guy take those out because I really think it's cool. And I'm going to actually hide turn signals in the fog lights. I've seen that done on some Volkswagen buses. So, there's a turn signal there. It's just kind of hidden, and it shows up if you turn on the turn signal.
Yeah, those
Um,
are just a standard size sealed beam, so you can probably get some pretty neat lights to update it.
yeah. Yep, that's the plan. So Michigan lights were all there, all the way around. There was one broken corner light. One of these corner lights is broken, but the seller actually gave me one, which is cool. He found another one for it, so he gave me all the parts. He came with it. The big flaw is on this belt line right here, this aluminum belt line. It got damaged, and we think it was damaged by a tow truck. In the process of trying to pick it up, it slipped off and it damaged it. Um, so I have right now, with labor, I've got about I've got what, $11,000 into this right now, and that's hard to believe when you stop to consider how much work. If you ever go out and find the bus grease monkey and do a search on pre-war, and that's this bus. He spent 2 full weeks, and Tyler, Indiana Diesel, also spent 2 full weeks working. We worked on this bus to get it rolling, and it still needs a lot of work. None of the doors really sit properly, so I'm going to have a metal guy come in and work on it. I just replaced the springs, which I've got a video coming up about how the springs got removed and replaced and everything. So that's been kind of going on this winter. But this is I paid $2,500 for it, which again is about scrap value. The seller, who is a well-known vintage bus guy, would only sell it to someone he felt confident was going to restore it. In other words, he didn't want to see it get parted out because it is such a rare bus. So this is a $17,500 bus right now. It's driving. It does run. All of the mechanicals now are 100%. We brand new brakes, brand new bearings, brand new tires, brand new springs. So all of the mechanics have really been gone over very succinctly. Brand new engine mount, which was kind of an interesting part of it. But I think the appearance, I'm going to probably leave it pretty similar to this. Clean it up a little bit, but leave it as a survivor. The next bus that we have is 3751-003. So this is out in Chino, California, and this is the third bus that was made in 1947. What do you think about this one?
This one has some damage underneath. Apparently, it was dropped being unloaded off a trailer, and apparently some of the rivets, although I don't see it in this picture looking at it, apparently some of the rivets have been ground down because somebody wanted to redo the body and they wanted a smooth look and they didn't understand that the rivets were functional. So that's kind of makes it a parts bus. The fact that it's down to a parts bus, and I know the owner's taken some parts off this one to resurrect another one, so it's missing some parts, some cooling system parts like the radiator and some of the pipes and hoses and stuff. So it's a parts bus. It probably always will be a parts bus at this point. So value, it's probably only worth $1,500, $2,000. Depends on how close you are to hauling it home. If you got to haul it, it's not worth that.
And that's the budget. When I've been looking for parts buses, I would say probably $2,000. That's worth it to me. Like if I needed parts on this bus that I didn't have, as opposed to going to eBay and trying to find them one at a time, buy a bus like this. The risk is, of course, you're stuck with trying to figure out how to get rid of a bus after you've taken all the parts off of it. But it's $2,500. I would say I would pay up to that for this one. The windows are in good shape. It's $800 to replace all the windows. So I would say this one's probably a $2,500 bus, but it's probably not going to see the road again, which is unfortunate.
Yeah, I think that one will always be a parts bus.
Now,
This one's not actually for sale. This it's a cool looking bus, but this one wasn't actually for sale.
why don't you talk a little bit about this one?
I don't know a whole lot about this one. I know the gentleman who owns it. He has another bus that's potentially for sale. I don't know, just a neat looking bus. I like it.
Yeah. Now look at the bumper. He did some cool stuff. There's a video floating out there on the internet of this bus driving down the beach, and it's neat. It's in North Carolina. A lot of these were used to go to race car. That's why, like, mine said racetrack on it. This one looks like it's got race decals on it and stuff. So guys used to go to NASCAR. They would set up buses like this, and just a really pretty bus that we came across a picture of it and thought that might be neat to just look at. So this is PD4151. Now this is this is a little later bus, but that's 287. So 4151s were, I think, only made in 1948.
48. Yeah,
Yep.
that's correct. They were towards the later end of the production.
So 3751s had 37 seats. These, they figured out a way to squeak another 4 seats out of it. And so it's just the seat configuration's a little different. This one was purchased. Do you remember what the auction price was? It was on eBay.
I think it went for about $4,000, maybe $4,500, which isn't a lot, considering I think it's fairly close to running. I think the new buyer might actually have it running already. I'm guessing the parking brake doesn't work by the blocks in front of the wheels.
Yeah. Well, and yeah, that's or just it's stuck, which mine was stuck.
Yeah.
So this one got purchased. I don't remember where it was for sale, but we saw pictures of it on a truck being hauled. It's now in Indiana, and this is a frequenter of the Bus Grease Monkey who bought it. But $4,000, that's a pretty good deal in my opinion for this bus.
Yeah, it looks like a reasonably straight bus. It's got all the windows. I know the back bumper's missing in the picture, but I think it was in the bus when he purchased it, because I remember inquiring about the bus when it was on eBay. It does look reasonably straight and reasonably complete and intact. I don't see any major holes in the sides or anything like that. Even the roof line looks pretty clean. I don't see any air conditioners up there. So yeah, this would be a great bus to restore back to looking original.
Okay, good deal for the guy who bought this one. This one looks pretty sharp. This is what's called the Texas bus. I own this bus. And Jason is responsible for me owning this bus. Jason kept looking at buses.
You can blame me on this one, yeah.
Yeah. The other one, the pre-war one, is all me. This one is Jason came across this one, said, "Boy, I really want to buy this bus." And at the last minute, he kind of kept on stalling and stalling. The owner of the bus said, "Hey, if you don't make a decision, I'm selling it to someone else." And you finally just said, "Hey, I'm not going to take it." And I've been looking at it. It was phenomenal. Originally, I thought this would be a great parts bus for my bus, but when I saw it, it's in too good a shape. There's a couple of Indiana Diesel has a series of videos. We've been down to it twice, and it's in really good shape, except there were a couple of ghosts in the engine that we are working through. I need to put a new blower on it. So, for restoration, I think right now I only have about $4,000 into parts, plus the tires, I guess. So 7,000 with the tires. And but what's been killing me is the travel. I just did my accounting, and we have a lot of expense, and Tyler and I driving down there and back. And so I cringe every time I have to go back, but we need to go back and put a blower on it, and then she's good to go. The roof has been cut. You can see the air conditioning unit in the back. But other than that, it's probably one of the more original with all the components. There's really nothing missing. All of the turn signal, little lamps, even on the front and the back.
It's even got the rear stop lens. It's all there. The
Yep.
glass is cracked, but everything's there. It's
Everything is there on this bus. The dash is all the original switches. They all have to be gone through and sanded. But I mean, this is a restoration guy's dream, in my opinion, because you don't have to go hunting for parts. You just have to restore the bus.
Yeah, I was pretty keen on this one. The thing that nixed it for me was the travel, because it's just so far away. I was worried about exactly what happened to you getting down there, having a showstopper, not being able to get it home, and you've been there twice, and you still got to go back and get it.
One more trip, and then she's gonna run. I did drive it. It drives like a dream. It has the air steer on it, which is really cool. Once we got it fixed, we crashed it at first because we couldn't steer. But we fixed that, and then But yeah, man, this thing took out a mailbox and it didn't even dent there's nothing with the bumper. These things are such rocks.
Yeah,
But
if you buy a Silverside, watch out for mailboxes.
yeah,
They've just got this thing that they aim for them apparently, or maybe it's just you.
maybe it's me. But anyway, so this is a great bus. I paid $4,000 for it. I'll be up front. When it's done running with the interior immaculate, it's probably worth 14, 15,000 with brand new tires, brand new blower. I mean, all the upgrades that I'm doing to it with all the electronics working and everything. It's probably a $14,000 bus. I don't know. What do you think with it running and everything electric?
Running, driving, you're probably about there. Yeah, and I believe this one's got a 4-valve head, if I'm not
It
mistaken.
it does. It's got a 4-valve head. I was kind of hoping for Jake brakes, but I was not lucky.
Yeah, and we didn't know that when you purchased it. It wasn't until you guys got there and pulled the valve cover.
Yeah. So this had a lot of good surprises on it.
Yeah, actually,
But
if you look
it's
really carefully in that picture, you can see the holes where the dog was. You can actually see the holes in the trim in the little
yeah,
square insert.
you can see the ghost. We call it the
Yeah.
ghost. So the dog was right there. So this is one that would be a good restoration bus, but because it is running and it does have tires and brakes and the hubs have been rebuilt, and I mean all of the mechanicals are essentially done, it jumps at like $10,000. And I probably, when it's all said and done, I'll probably sell it for what I have into it. I probably won't keep this one because I am married and I want to stay that way. Uh, but but
What?
it's a really sweet bus.
Yeah,
So this one is in Maryland. Now you actually flew in and saw this one.
I drove up down to see this one
Oh, you
actually.
drove. Okay.
Yeah, I drove. I didn't fly. I drove. Um, this is a really interesting bus. This has got a lot of original stuff with it. The gentleman that owns it has a full set of seats. Now they obviously need to be reupholstered, but he has the entire set of seats. Part of the reason I didn't buy this bus is I would feel bad if I converted it into a motorhome. Even if I kept all the seats, um, I think it would still be a bad thing. This one should be continued going on the route that it's going. Somebody needs to take it and redo the seats and keep it as a seated coach. A seated Silverside is just so rare. I don't think I'd want anybody to buy this bus that's going to cut holes in it and make it into an RV. It should stay as a seated coach.
So where would you put it? I mean, seated coaches are rare. I think there's only one. The bus boys up in Minnesota have a seated coach that they just got. But I mean, a seated coach, where would that put this price? Because it's got some work to it, but it's not impossible. I mean, it's pretty straight.
Yeah, it there's a number of things structurally I think it could use improvements on. It's tough to value a seated coach because realistically they're difficult to insure and drive. Really only museums or people who have fleets can insure and drive them because you as an individual, if you wanted to insure a seated coach, that's going to be very difficult to do, I think.
You're basically getting in the bus business
Yeah, yeah.
because you
So
have to
that
register it as a motor coach, not an RV.
Yeah, and I think that really is a huge downside as far as value. I mean, I think it's got lots of value because it is an original seated coach, but as far as somebody who's actually going to buy it, it's a very, very, very limited market. So that
Yeah.
makes it kind of difficult.
There is a few states, I think Texas is one, and maybe Tennessee, where you can register a bus this old as vintage and get around the motor coach designation. But again, it's a small market. I'm going to put this at somewhere around 17 to 20,000.
Yeah.
Um, and even though it is kind of a smaller market, it looks just really good. It probably has some mechanicals that needs to have done to it, but it looks really sharp. And given the fact it's got its seats, I would say it's probably a 17 to $20,000 bus.
Yeah, it's hard to say. You got to find the right buyer. The motor had a bit of blow by, but it had been sitting for a long time, so it might free itself up. Who knows? You'd have to drive it for a bit. I think the seller's actually pulled it off the market. I don't think he's interested in selling it anymore.
Okay. Well, it was an interesting bus when it came up. I know you got really excited about it. And then, you really looked at what you want to do, and this didn't seem to fit your goals. So,
No, I'd feel too guilty turning this into an RV, even if I kept all the parts. Like I'd keep it original with all the heater ducts and the package trays and everything, but I just think it's too original to do what I want to do to a bus.
all right, let's move to the next one. Let's see. So this one, uh, Port Bear, Louisiana. Uh, I see something that doesn't look quite as exciting as that last one.
Certainly not. One of our friends, Patrick, who's also on the Bus Grease Monkey forum, went and looked at it for me. The price was right. I think you can buy this one for about $1,500, but it's way, way, way in the back of someone's field. You're going to need a decent sized tractor to haul it out of there to even get it to a spot where you could get it onto a flatbed. Um, I think this one's probably going to be a parts bus, in my opinion. After Patrick went and looked at it and told me about it, it's probably been sitting for 30 plus years, and everything's seized up on it.
All right. So let's go. We'll look at one that isn't for sale here, and this might be a kind of our last one we're going to look at today. I think we'll probably end up having a couple different videos.
Hey, the door's on the wrong side, eh?
Well, that picture is, I think, flipped around. So this is a
the UK Silverside.
This is I think it's residing in Rochester. It might be actually in St. Paul, Minnesota right now. This is actually owned by the Bus Boys. They have over 50 vintage buses. This is a fully seated coach. They got it, I think, from a transportation company that had it in the back of their lot, and finally called these guys up. So Stan and the crew that are there I mean, they have the biggest collection of vintage buses in the United States, hands down. And they've got some really cool things. We've seen some videos from a couple of different people. Phil, I think, is an internet hero who works for Stan. And then there's a couple of other folks that are part of that crew. They picked this one up. We don't really know how much they paid for it, but again, it falls into that same category as that one we just saw a couple ago, which is it's a seated coach. It's a very rare market. They're the perfect buyer for a seated coach because they own a bus company. So to just
That
add
one
another,
looks like it's even got the destination side on the side of it too.
the side marker.
No,
Let's see.
it's got the
Over
side
here.
destination. Yeah, I can see it
Yeah.
there. Yeah.
Yeah, it does, and that's my pre-war has that. My Texas bus does not have that, and that's really cool. You could see it on the front, and then they have it on the side, like either the bus number or the route number on the side. So it's the original blue on the interior, which means it hasn't really been repainted, or it maybe has, but they kept the original color. It does have this interior element to it, which is the defroster vents and the luggage racks, and all of that stuff has not been torn out, which happens to a lot of these buses. Um, Again, I would call this, maybe because it doesn't have the dog on it, and it's in other words, the paint has been changed a little bit. I'd probably still call this a $17,000 bus. And I don't know what kind of work they have to put into it, but it's a really nice bus.
Yeah, if it's running and driving and doesn't need anything to roll down the road, then you're probably pretty close. And I think that's probably about right. Just a note, they call that a modesty panel. I didn't know that myself. One of the guys on the Grease Monkey forum, maybe it was Tom actually that told us that, but it was called a modesty panel because it blocked the view of the ladies' skirts as you
Yeah, you
walked
didn't
up
have
the
to look
bus.
up their skirt as you're walking your
Yeah,
bus. Always
darn.
figuring out ways to, you know, to be proper, I guess. But yeah, modesty panel. I have one of those on my Texas bus. I don't have it on my my other bus. And that's like those like that previous bus, like this one. If it had the modesty panel in it, that's the type of bus I'm looking for. Where if I remove that, I wouldn't feel
It
bad
does.
that I'm
That one
taking
has
it.
the heater ducts and the modesty panel, I believe. I'd have to go back to the original pictures Patrick sent me, but I
Yeah.
think it does.
So that would be a good bus to buy as a parts bus, but then what do you do with it? You're stuck with a bus in Louisiana, and now you got to figure out how to get rid of it.
Yeah, it's pretty far south.
So we'll leave with this one today. This will be our last one for this video. And this
Yeah.
is we're both laughing because we both know the story on this one. So this one's in Hanahan, South Carolina. It's for sale right now for $10,000, which is a pipe dream with a capital P. There are trees around it. They finally, I guess, cut the trees out. The sellers, it's been in their backyard for 20 years. A friend of ours, Rodney, went and looked at it. He found the generator lying in the dirt 10 feet behind the bus. So that means that people started pulling it apart. The problem is when you start taking parts off, water gets into the engine. And then when
Yeah,
water
if you
gets
look
in,
at that picture on the right, you can see all of the accessories have been removed off the back of the engine. So the generator, compressor, it's all been taken off. So it's just been open to the elements.
So these two are original Michigan lights. This one's not. So you're gonna have to go looking for parts and bits. Um, it's this is a $4,000. Actually, probably not even worth that. This is like a
No,
$3,500 bus all day long.
I wouldn't even go that high. I'd say it's probably a $2,000 bus because it's full of junk too. You're gonna have to pay for a dumpster full of crap to get rid of.
So this is an example of someone who has seen the excitement, seen the videos out there on the YouTubes, and have decided that that this would be a great thing to sell. But it's going to just stay for sale forever, or somebody's going to finally keep bugging them until they get it for a reasonable price. But getting it out of here will be a $2,000 bill on its own, because where it is behind the house down a steep hill, you're going to have to get one tow truck to pull with a cable to pull it up the hill, and then you'll have to get a low boy or some kind of semi to load it up. If you can get anybody to come and do it at all, you're going to be into some money, just to get the thing out of the guy's backyard. So that one's going to be a problem for anybody.
Looks like it's got stop sign parts, which is kind of cool. It's still got the drum and the frame and
Yeah,
the center lens.
which those go for about $500. So that's, there's some parts in there, but again, you're not going to part it out in this guy's backyard. He's going to want it out of his property.
Yeah.
All right, well, let's take a break here. So this will be the end of part one, and then we're going to do a couple other parts to this. So stay tuned and let us know what you think, if we're way off or what have you. And if you have questions about the buses, we'll try to answer them in the comments. But best place is to go to busgreasemonkey.com. Jason and I kind of help run that site, and we would be more than happy to help you get in and become a member of the forum. And then there's a discussion that goes on about buses that are for sale. So with that, hey, Jason, thanks for stopping by, and let's do this again soon.
Yeah, thanks for having me.